Can I talk about the original Pokemon sprites? Sure. So these are they, and don't get me wrong, they do look blocky. I'm not saying that every retro sprite didn't look blocky. In fact, some of them had to have some pixely nature to them just due to technological limitation. But what I'm saying is the goal here was not to make them look blocky. The goal was to translate a picture of a creature as efficiently as possible using as little space and only 4 shades. And that's kind of what I'm saying. The goal back then was to work within restrictions and hide those restrictions as best as possible. You can't always do it because those restrictions were real, but they did their best. And that's partially why we saw the Pokemon art style evolve. This is Mew over several Game Boy generation games. This Mew is a lot more angular, and this Mew is a lot more rounded. Part of refining the Pokemon art style was seeing what shapes and perspectives translated better to a handheld screen. This had the added benefit of more rounded designs being more welcoming to a younger audience in general. So yeah, when I say older sprite art was meant to hide pixels instead of emphasize pixels, I don't mean that you never noticed the pixels. What I mean was looking pixely was not a goal back then. Translating an image to a format that uses very little data was the goal back then. These are modern Pokemon done in classic GBA style by an artist on Twitter. Their name is Pokits. They're amazing. Go look them up. Now, Pokits and other artists don't have the same limitation. And without those limitations, they get to choose what aspects of their pixel art get emphasized. That was something older pixel art couldn't do as easily. So you can see heavier borders, higher contrasting colors, as opposed to more blended colors, less contrasting colors. Same deal here. Again, I think this is very important. I'm not saying this is bad. This is great. This is an incredibly talented artist. But working without the limitations of the original hardware means you don't have the concerns of the original hardware, which means modern day pixel artists really aren't thinking as much about how to get realistic shading from only 4 shades. They're not thinking about space and memory limitations. And they're not thinking about how to translate curved and round styles in a format that mostly uses big black blocks. And that's because modern sprite art is evoking this, whereas this was evoking hand-drawn art. Modern pixel art is trying to look retro. That's why there's so much emphasis on the pixely shapes and colors. Retro pixel art, however, was just trying to look like art, like hand-drawn art. It was doing its best to show art with technological limitation. And so the goals of the two art styles are completely different. Both are great, but the goals are completely different.